If you want to be an entrepreneur and build tech for good, just do it. Instead of like writing policy or building a center or talking about it, just go do it.
Welcome to High Agency, igniting conversations with inspiring people, leading transformative change. Welcome to High Agency at Web Summit. We're talking to founders, builders, and thinkers. I'm Mo Dhaliwal, and today we're going to be talking to Manik Suri, the CEO and founder at GlacierGrid. Manik, welcome.
Thanks,
for taking the time. I know you got a very tight schedule.
No, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you're tackling climate change in a really interesting way, in a way I think people don't necessarily go to immediately, which is actually cooling, right? Restaurants, retailers, massive HVAC systems, hospitality, everybody has some sort of cooling engine, and you guys have developed some systems and some solutions to really tackle that. You're working with, 7-Eleven, Marriott, Delta, any other big notable clients?
Yeah, we have a few American fast casual and fast food brands, McDonald's, Taco Bell, Domino's, Pizza Hut.
Yeah, incredible. Now, before we dive into the company, I want to talk a little bit about your journey.
Is this where we talk Punjabi?
Not so much for this one.
Good.
You were at a very interesting role with the White House, right? So could you talk a little bit about the National Economic Council and what made you leave what I would imagine is a very bureaucratic environment to actually become an entrepreneur and go into your own startup?
Yeah, no, I think it was just that. I appreciate the question. I was a young, right out of law school, idealist. I think more West Wing than House of Cards. So I was like, government's a force for good. I was really inspired by Senator Obama when he ran for president. Worked on his campaign a little bit, joined the White House team as a junior person. And it was right around the time when the Democrats and the Republicans in the US couldn't agree on anything. It was kind of the beginning of the end of political consensus, 2011. And I was there 2011 and 2012. And basically the thing I took away was politics and policy are very closely intertwined. You can have great ideas and great policy initiatives, but if you don't have the political will behind them, nothing gets done. And after 2 years of kind of seeing people, really talented, really thoughtful policy leaders spinning their wheels and realizing that the politics just weren't there, I got frustrated and said, maybe I can go and do something more impactful in the private sector, but really in the technology sector. And so I met a woman in DC. She was the deputy CTO in the Obama White House, Beth Novick. Obama had created this office of the CTO for the first time. Anish Chopra was the CTO. Beth was the deputy. And they were basically working on building tech for good. So as opposed to using tech to make pizza delivery faster or photo sharing easier, and I love pizza and I like photos. So I have a 4-year-old and I eat pizza all the time, but I wasn't interested in building tech around these kinds of everyday activities. I was much more interested in like tech around governance, sustainability, safety, big public problems. And so I got inspired. She'd written a book called WikiGov. I read the book, decided to join her and started a center with her at MIT and NYU called the GovLab, a kind of civic technology center. A couple of years of doing that, and then I decided to become an entrepreneur and build tech for myself. So that was the transition.
Yeah. What do you have to learn? I mean, how much of your experience in bureaucracy in the White House, how much of that translated? Were there new skills that you had to pick up, or was it all just graceful?
Yeah, I would say none. Yeah, I had to unlearn everything I learned. No, joking aside, there were some things from my first part of my career that were helpful, like understanding the public sector at a high level, being able to understand how to apply for grants, being able to understand how to think about Department of Energy loans, for example, being able to think about how to work with policy leaders around getting catalysts for adoption. So those kind of high level insights were helpful. But basically what I discovered was being an entrepreneur is the opposite in many ways of being a lawyer or a government bureaucrat. And I was kind of both for a brief minute. I went to law school and I worked in policy. And in law and policy, you get to be slow, methodical, you manage for risk, you try and think, you measure twice, cut once. It's a very precision matters. In entrepreneurship, agility, innovation, and speed require a lot of risk taking, a lot of, shoot first, aim later, a lot of leap before you kind of know where you're going to fall. And so I had to unlearn a lot of the risk. My relationship with risk took a 180.
Yeah.
I went from a risk optimizer, and before law school, I worked at one of the biggest hedge funds in the world for 4 years, which is a risk optimization function.
Yeah.
As an investor, you're trying to reduce risk. As an entrepreneur, you're taking on a ton of risk.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to flip my entire mental model around risk in particular and decision making.
Yeah.
So those were the big shifts. But the substance of knowing how government works, has been helpful.
Yeah, that would be very valuable. And I have to ask this question. I mean, you have Punjabi parents. So when you left the White House, Obama's White House, how disappointed were they? You're now going into entrepreneurship.
I think I would say this. My parents were definitely more supportive as the company had more success. So
No way, big surprise.
once we raised about 50 million. We have about 60 people on the team. We've got a company now. There were definitely in the beginning years, there were some tough conversations around, you have 2 Harvard degrees and a Cambridge degree.
Yeah.
You worked at the White House and D. Shaw.
Yeah,
Are you sure this is what you want to be doing?
Yeah.
Yes. But I will say, and I really appreciate my dad in particular, is kind of a very expansive human. He's an entrepreneur himself, came to the US as an immigrant, kind of made it, and runs his own, practice, also as an investor. But he's a risk on, not a risk off kind of person. And so he always supported the kind of,
He got it on some level.
he got it on some level. And he also cares a lot about it. My parents both care a lot about service and social impact. They're doctors.
Yeah.
But, he also got the kind of commitment to kind of conservation and the environment. He had read a book called The Greening of America in the 70s when he was living in Delhi. And he decided that he wanted to live in Marin County in the US. And now my parents live in the Bay Area. I grew up in the Bay Area and I live in San Francisco. But that was like 45 years ago, 50 years ago. He read this book and he's like, I want to live there. So he's kind of that type of person.
That's incredible. Sounds like a pretty decisive guy.
He's a very decisive person.
And decisions are actually something that you've commented about. There's this great quote you had where you're referencing a mentor of yours. And I hope I'm not disillusioning you here, but I looked up the quote and it's actually from Yogi Berra, which is, if you find a fork in the road, take it. Yeah.
Totally.
What are like the hardest decisions you've had to make? And, which are the ones that went well and which ones went horrible? We've got, another 8 minutes.
Hardest decisions, getting married.
Yeah.
For me, it was a really hard decision and best decision I ever made. So there you go. Sometimes it pays to be patient. I took 12 years to propose to my girlfriend, who is now my wife. We've been together for 24.
That's a period of indecision you're describing.
I would say it was a period of data collection. So we met freshman week of college at Harvard.
Yeah.
We dated for 12 years. I proposed. She thankfully didn't say no. It was close. We've now been married for a little over 11 years. So,
and the data collection continues.
And the data collection, mostly on her. Exactly. That's an example of the way I was in my teens and 20s. Be really methodical, collect all the information, study, very hard for the test. And I think deciding to be an entrepreneur, I didn't think very much about. I just kind of decided one day. I was having a chat with my now co-founder, but at the time colleague at the GovLab, the Civic Tech Center. And he was like, look, if you want to be an entrepreneur and build tech for good, just do it. Instead of like writing policy or building a center or talking about it, just go do it. And I just decided, I said, okay, I'm going to go be an entrepreneur. I knew nothing about entrepreneurship. I'd never raised $1. My parents had given me money to run for student body president. So I'd never even raised money for like a school race. So I made every mistake you can make as an entrepreneur the first time around. But, and I think, it was good to just take the plunge, because if I had known what I was getting into, I probably would have done it.
Oh, I mean, that resonates to me so deeply. I feel like anything meaningful I've done in life, if I had actually done the math at the time, I probably wouldn't have even started.
Exactly.
It's like that flight of the bumblebee, right? It's like,
right.
Doesn't know it's supposed to be able to not fly. But like, let's talk about your mission a little bit, because, again, maybe it's a amazing exercise in like healthy naivety, because on some level, when I was looking at your company, I'm like, wow, this kind of feels like trying to boil the ocean, right? Like this is a pretty massive undertaking of affecting, health, the food systems, right? The planet to that scale, but also trying to intersect these massive realms, right? Like you're touching on IoT, AI, and climate tech. And each one of these is a like massive discipline unto itself, right? How are you feeling about your mission today? Like, how's the progress been, and what are you excited about?
I mean, I feel a lot of urgency about the mission. The mission is, I think, more important than ever. I just got off a panel talking about why climate tech still matters, even though Project 2025 is gaining ground. So, I think that species degradation is at an all-time high. We've lost like 65% of biodiversity. We've lost a huge amount of, unfortunately, sustainability in the broad sense, our relationship to consumption, our relationship to the natural world. Emissions is just one example of that. And, my grandparents live in Delhi. I've probably traveled to about 100 countries. I tell you, people are pretty much the same everywhere in my experience. And yet like 18 million humans live with 200 to 800 parts per million pollution in Delhi, 20 million in Manila, 15 million in Beijing. That's just not sustainable. And it's also not, from a humanitarian standpoint, that's not good for people. And I worry, I'm privileged. I live in San Francisco. We have pretty clean air right now, but we've had 6 wildfires in the last 10 years in the Bay Area, and some big ones. I was in Napa the day that the Tubbs fire started. I was actually on an anniversary trip with my wife the first night of the biggest wildfire, and we were evacuated with 18 fire trucks out back to our house in San Francisco. That was in 2017. It was a Sunday night. I still remember the wind was blowing. So, I never expected that, this kind of stuff would happen right at our doorstep. But I say that because I think the mission matters more than ever. It's a big problem, and it's going to take many, many, many people to attack it. We're just one small group of innovators. Cooling happens to be an area where we can make a lot of progress because it's a big source of warming, ironically. A combination of food waste, refrigerant leaks, and energy use. Those 3 things create a lot of warming. And there's a lot of cooling in the world, and most of it's dumb. It's not really innovated in the last 50 years. So we're bringing kind of basic, in some ways, technologies, sensors, controls, software to make dumb equipment smart. And then the next generation of technologies is, AI and data science and making them smarter. So I think any big undertaking has this kind of dimension, which is like, you can't do it alone. It takes truly a village. Probably in this case, it takes nations. But it feels good to work on something that matters.
Look, I mean, it definitely matters. But again, it's a massive problem with massive systems that you're trying to integrate. And like you mentioned, Project 2025. So considering the fact that you have to work with a lot of government, right? And thankfully you have a lot of fluency in that area and know how to navigate those spaces. But at the same time, you're likely having to interface with a lot of investors that are also paying attention to where attention is shifting and what the world is looking at. How has the culture change, like affecting what GlacierGrid is doing? Like, are you impacted by it? What is your relationship like with governments?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it has definitely changed our positioning. It's affected in some ways the way we go to market. So a couple of specific examples. We have always been an energy management company, but we often in the past would emphasize emissions and some of the sustainability. Today, in the last year, we've been really focused on energy savings and energy resilience. So being able to reduce your energy bills matters a lot, whether you're Republican or Democrat, right or left. Being able to reduce stress on utilities and grids, that matters a lot, particularly to folks that care about the U.S. Security situation. People want the U.S. and the U.S. especially to be energy independent. One thing you need is really resilient electricity grids. Otherwise, you have brownouts and blackouts. So being able to position our technology as good for U.S. energy resilience, good for U.S. energy security, and good for businesses to save money, that has really gotten us traction with customers. We've been growing at a pretty fast clip despite the political shifts.
That's encouraging, at least.
And people care about saving money, and people care about reducing their energy use. And energy demand has skyrocketed with AI. And inflationary pressures have been high for the last 5 years. So it's still a super tight environment, and energy matters more than ever. So we're fortunate to work in an area where there's a lot of need. Doesn't matter what your politics.
So looking out into the future, GlacierGrid is a fully realized company. What does that look like, and what's the impact you've had on the way these systems work?
I think 2 dimensions. One is scale. The other is, kind of depth of technology stack. Scale-wise, we're in 5,000 locations today. There are probably 20 million locations that we could be in terms of commercial establishments that have cooling, air conditioning, refrigeration. So 5,000 is not even a drop in a drop of, the bucket of the addressable market. I would love to see us at 1 million locations in 10 years. And that would still be, a fraction, 5% of the addressable market. So it's, just a kind of massive, as you said, massive problem. But if we could demonstrate that this is possible and help show, even if we're in 1 million locations, we're a deca horn And maybe other companies start adopting similar solutions, and maybe new technologies that emerge, the OEMs that make this stuff.
Yeah.
They've been around for 50 to 100 years. These are big companies. Honeywell, Danfoss, Mitsubishi, Samsung, Bacharach. It would be great if our technologies and technologies like them could exist everywhere. And then if we could drive, 20% savings, not 10,
Yeah.
I'd feel great.
Last word.
Yep.
If somebody's about to undertake something massive, as you have, what's one piece of advice you would give them?
Do it.
Do it.
Don't think too much. Don't question. I mean, do think, do question. We all have to do that. That's kind of our cognitive, our conscience and our consciousness acting. But I don't think those concerns and those feelings ever go away.
Yeah.
So just
Get going. All right. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Manik, really appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much.
pleasure, Mo.
All right.
Well, hopefully we've given you a lot to think about. That was High Agency. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.